Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada. Prabhupada, Jaya Srila Prabhupada. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Astatara Sata Hisavangre Shila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Shila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Gaura Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Govardhana Dari Ki Jai. Shri Shri Krishna Balaram Giraj Shingadev Ki Jai. Shri Shri Gauranitai Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So Hare Krishna everyone, and welcome to this morning's Srimad Bhagavatam class. So lately we've been studying Canto 3, Chapter 23, which is entitled Devahuti's Lamentation, and we are up to text number 11. Let's see if this little gadget works here. Yep, good. Okay, so this is, we can use the meter for the Govindam prayers for this, because it's a long line. So we go. Tatreti krityam upashikshayato padesham Yenai same karshitu tiriram sayatma Siddhyeta te krita mano bhavadarshitaya Dinastadisha bhavanam sadrisham vichikshva Tatreti krityam upashikshayato padesam Yenaisha me karshito tiriram sayatma. Sidyeta te krita mano babadarshitaya. Dinastadisha bhavanam sadrisham vichakshva. I'll do it one more time. Tatreti krityam upashiksha yatopadesham. Yenaisha me karshito tiriram sayatma. Sidyeta te krita mano babadarshitaya. Dinastadisha bhavanam sadrisham vichakshva. Okay, someone like to lead the chanting? Tatreti krityam upashekshakado padesham. Sidyeta te krita mano bhavadarshitaya. Dinastadisha bhavanam sadrisham vichakshva. Tatreti krityam upashisham topadesham. Sidyeta te krita mano bhavadarshitaya. Dinastadisha bhavanam sadrisham vichakshva. I might just go to the ladies. Yeah, somebody like to lead. Tadretit krityam upashikshayato padesham. Yanesha me pashita ayatma. Sidyeta te krita mano bhavadarshitaya. Dinastadisha bhavanam sadrisham vichakshva. Okay, we can have one more of the ladies. Anyone? Tatreti krityam upashikshayato padesham. Yenaisha me karshita tiraram sayatma. Sidyeta te krita mano bhavadarshitaya. Dinastadisha bhavanam sadrisham vichakshva. Thank you very much. Okay, here we go. Synonyms. Tatra, in that. Iti krityam, what is necessary to be done. Upashiksha, perform. Yata, according to. Upadesham, instruction in scripture. Yena, by which. Esha, this. Me, my. Karshita, emaciated. Atiriram saya, due to intense passion not being satisfied. Atma, body. Siddhyata, it may be rendered fit. Te, for you. Krita, excited. Manabhava, by emotion. Darshitaya, who am struck. Dina, poor. Tat, therefore. Isha, O my dear Lord. Bhavanam, house. Sadrisham, suitable. Vichikshva, please think of. Okay. So here we go, the actual translation. Devahuti continued, my dear Lord, I'm struck by excited emotion for you. Therefore kindly make what arrangements must be made according to the scriptures so that my skinny body, emaciated through unsatisfied passion, may be rendered fit for you. Also, my Lord, please think of a suitable house for this purpose. All right, so translation, repeat. Devahuti continued, my dear Lord, I'm struck by excited emotion for you. Therefore, kindly make what arrangements must be made according to the scriptures so that my skinny body, emaciated through unsatisfied passion, may be rendered fit for you. Also, my Lord, please think of a suitable house for this purpose. Jai. Okay, purport by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The Vedic literatures are not only full of spiritual instruction, but are also instructive in how to prosecute material existence very nicely, with the ultimate aim of spiritual perfection. Devahuti asked her husband, therefore, how to prepare herself for sex life according to the Vedic instructions. Sex life is especially meant for having good children. The circumstances for creating good children are mentioned in Kama Shastra, the scripture in which suitable arrangements are prescribed for factually glorious sex life. Everything needed is mentioned in the scriptures, what sort of house and decorations there should be, what sort of dress the wife should have, how she should be decorated with ointments, scents, and other attractive features, etc. With these requisites fulfilled, the husband will be attracted by her beauty and a favorable mental situation will be created. The mental situation at the time of sex life may then be transferred into the womb of the wife, and good children can come out of that pregnancy. Here is a special reference to Devahuti's bodily features. Because she had become skinny, she feared that her body might have no attraction for Kardama. She wanted to be instructed how to improve her bodily condition in order to attract her husband. Sexual intercourse in which the husband is attracted to the wife is sure to produce a male child, but sexual intercourse based on attraction of the wife for the husband may produce a girl. That is mentioned in the Ayurveda. When the passion of the woman is greater, there is a chance of a girl being born, a girl's being born. When the passion of the man is greater, then there is the possibility of a son. Devahuti wanted the passion of her husband to be increased by the arrangement mentioned in the Kama Shastra. She wanted him to instruct her in that way, and so also requested that he arrange for a suitable house, because the hermitage in which Kardama Muni was living was very simple and completely in the mode of goodness, and there was less possibility of passions being aroused in the heart. Okay. Jai. Naranayam namaskritya naram chaiva narattamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jaya mudirayet nashta prayashvabhadreshu nityam bhagavat sevaya bhagavat chatma shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki amma gyati mirandasya ganandana shalakya chakshurun militam yena tasmai shri gurave namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dharati Svapadantikam. So I humbly ask for the blessings of the Vaishnava devotees so that I can give a nice class on a class that is pleasing to our lordships, to Srila Prabhupada and to the assembled Vaishnava devotees. Yeah. Okay, so let's have a look. All right, so in his first sentence, in his purport, Srila Prabhupada mentions that, yes, the Vedic literatures, they are not only full of spiritual instructions, but they also have many instructions how one can carry out material existence very nicely, with, of course, the aim being to achieve one's spiritual goals. Now, in the very next sentence, in his purport, Srila Prabhupada says, therefore, Devahuti asked her husband how to prepare herself for sex life according to Vedic instructions. So this is indicating, Prabhupada's words here, it does indicate that Devahuti was already aware that, yes, the Vedas do contain information about how grihastas should ideally live in this world. And not only was she aware of that, but as we hear in the actual shloka, she wanted her husband to tell her how she could prepare herself in accordance with the recommendations that are there in the scriptures. So it was not that Devahuti, wanted to make some sort of haphazard arrangement for herself, something whimsical, just thrown together according to her own personal desires. No, she wanted to do things properly in accordance with Vedic guidelines. So in the teachings of Lord Kapila Dev, I'm sure some of you have read this book, Srila Prabhupada is saying like this, that Devahuti was not an ordinary woman. She was the wife of the great yogi, Kardama Muni. He was a great yogi. And certainly, Devahuti was exalted. Right, that's the word that Srila Prabhupada uses, exalted. Also, we hear in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada is saying that Devahuti was very much advanced in the eightfold yoga system. So we would have covered this shloka a few months ago here. So her husband, Kardama Muni, he was known as a Mahayogi, that's a great yogi, and a great mystic also, as well as a great scholar. And Devahuti was known as a Yoga Lakshana, right? That is one who is advanced in yoga. Right, so Devahuti is, we could say she is above the mentality of women who are, conditioned by the material energy and who don't have any understanding of religious and spiritual goals. So in today's shloka, yes, Devahuti, she's asking her spiritually enlightened husband to tell her what do the Vedas say about women who are situated in the Grihastha ashram. How should they prepare themselves for sexual union with their husbands? Right? And we can understand that such preparation, it's not just for the body, it's also for the consciousness, preparation for the mind also. So as Srila Prabhupada is saying, the Vedas actually contain many instructions, as well as they contain many examples, right, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, for individuals who want to become householders, right? And in his purport, right, Srila Prabhupada is mentioning the Kama Shastra. Now, I believe the Kama Shastra contains the Kama Sutra, that is a part of a broader Kama Shastra, and both of these actually belong to a category of texts defined as Dharma Shastra. So the Dharma Shastra, Srila Prabhupada writes, they are I think there's a series of 20, or they come in 20 categories. And they are composed by Swayambhuva Manu and Parashara Muni, right? These were the two names that I found. Yeah. And Prabhupada says that of all of the Dharma Shastras, the Manusamhita is the most important. Also, we hear Prabhupada mentioned there is a Dharma Shastra called Vimsati Prakara. I don't know if any of you have heard that. I only found one reference for this in all of Prabhupada's books. Vimsati Prakara. It is one of the Dharma Shastras, and there is some specific mention in that Shastra discussing how Grihastas should ideally engage in sex life. So the Dharma Shastras, yes, they are texts that are generally aimed at delivering moral teachings and behavioral codes for humanity, for human societies at large. But, you know, we know that even within our core Vaishnava literatures, such as the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, we do find many instructions and many examples that are promoting and teaching what is a moral and healthy and a prosperous way of life for Grihastas. Right. Of course, you know, we also find teachings for individuals within the other ashrams also. And if these instructions are followed very faithfully, then we can expect to see very peaceful and steady societies, right? Because these instructions, they've been given by very elevated souls who are very knowledgeable in all types of field of knowledge. Right? And so I've listed a few points up here on the screen. Yes, if these instructions are followed, they can, for the householder, they can help householders to create a peaceful situation, right, for themselves and also for those whom they are in a relationship with, such as their spouse and families and so forth. They can also help householders to produce good children, which we will be discussing in a minute. They can also instruct householders in their social behavior. Right, so that, in other words, so that householders, so that their acts become pleasing to other people in society rather than disturbing. Right? And when we say society, we are not only talking about human societies, we're talking about the societies of all types of living beings. Also, there are instructions for, you know, that Grihastas can take advantage of for how they should interact with spiritually elevated souls, right? So we're talking about, you know, our munis, our rishis, the brahmanas, the gurus, and this is actually paramount. I think it was Vaishnavi who mentioned this in her class a week ago. Yeah, this is actually paramount, you know, to observe these standards of behavior. And if we look at, you know, our traditional Vaishnava societies, if we go back in time through our different yugas, we will see that, you know, the way that Grihastas were honouring and just interacting with these spiritually elevated souls, it was considered very, very important. So this particular teaching is certainly supported throughout the Shastra. Also, you know, we do find instructions for how householders should observe the etiquettes that are established within what we call the Varnashram system. You know, in other words, you know, which is the ideal way that individuals should interact with other individuals who are situated differently within both the Varna and the Ashram systems. Also, we do find throughout the Shastra instructions for how Grihastas should ideally work. Right. So the Grihasta ashram means work. Grihastas have to work. You know, they need to support their children, they need to support the family, they need to support the elder members, you know, the relatives, and also they have a duty to give in charity, you know, in the traditional Vedic Vaishnava lifestyle model. And, you know, to do that without exploiting Mother Bhumi and without exploiting Mother Bhumi's natural resources. Right, so these days, you know, when young adults sort of, you know, they're coming out of school and they're meditating on, oh, what sort of a career am I going to choose for myself? You know, what sort of work am I going to do? You know, I want to get married or whatever. And so, we don't see so much these days that a primary consideration is how that work is going to impact on Mother Bhumi. In Kali Yuga, we don't see this so much. There are some individuals, who do pay attention to it, but mostly we don't see it so much. But this is another very important factor for grihastas, when they start to work in the world, on the earth. But in the greater scheme of things, right, all Vedic literatures, they do aim to guide societies, grihastas, and all other individuals towards attaining higher spiritual goals. Right? This is what the Vedas do for all genres of people. They guide them to smoothly achieve their spiritual goals in Krishna consciousness. Now, a very good example of, shall we say, general instructions appearing throughout the Vedas that do address, or that can address, all of the points that I had up in the previous slide, are, of course, the three modes of material nature. Right? Now, Krishna himself says in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 245, he says that the Vedas do deal mainly with the subject matter of the three modes of material nature. So these teachings, there are quite detailed descriptions given. We know that in the Bhagavad Gita, yes, chapter 14, I think also 17 and 18 have got a lot of descriptions about thinking and working and living in the different modes. Also in Srimad Bhagavatam, we have in Canto 11, I think it's chapter 13 and so another one, there's very nice descriptions of what actually constitutes the different modes of material nature. So, yes, so, Prabhupada uses this word. When Srila Prabhupada is discussing the gunas, he uses the word associating. Right? Oh, which guna are you associating with? So we need to take these instructions very seriously. And we know that, for example, right, so living, working, acting, sleeping, eating, so forth in the mode of goodness, right, that is going to produce a sustainable situation. Right? The outcomes of the mode of goodness is that the individual can see more clearly. Right? They can see themselves, they can see others better, they can understand their own situatedness in the world. Right? Also, Sattva Gun supports religious life, and it does develop a greater awareness. So that's the outcome of Sattva Gun. And as we know, the outcome of working and sleeping and living in Rajagun is primarily stress, anxiety, misery, and so forth, frustration. And the outcomes of Tamagun are primarily destruction, helplessness, hopelessness, foolishness, and eventually, if things get really bad, then it leads to madness, which is the worst outcome. So these are instructions that can certainly be taken advantage of by grihastas and also other individuals. So they are beneficial both for the individual and for the various societies in which grihastas may be functioning. And perhaps one of the most sort of fundamental teachings, or shall we say general broad teaching for grihastas, we can see up here on the board. Yeah, it is this, it's what we call a dichotomy, when two principles are diametrically, they're opposed to each other. So we have the grihastas and then we have the grihamedis. So grihastas may be defined as couples who are aiming to spend time together for the sake of adhering to religious protocol and helping each other to achieve their spiritual goals. And this type of approach to being in a marriage, or even just being man and woman being together, this type of mentality is more aligned with Sattva Gun. Mostly aligned with Sattva Gun. Then we have the Grihamedis. So the Grihamedis may be defined as couples who are aiming to spend time together for the sake of indulging in material life. That means for the sake of satisfying their own material desires and maybe the desires of those who are close to them. So that type of mentality is very much aligned with Rajagun and, to some other extent, Tamagun also. Right? Now, Srila Prabhupada, in the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, he says that the word Medi, right, the Medi part of the Griha Medi, the word Medi indicates jealousy of others, right? And he says, with the meaning being that Griha Medis, because they are immersed in their own enjoyment with their families, they become envious of others who are also trying to enjoy in the same way. Now, Prabhupada says in the Kali Yuga, all the householders are jealous of one another because they are blind to the knowledge of ultimate truth. So, of course, in that particular quote, when Prabhupada says householders, yes, he's referring to the Grihamadis, not the Grihastas. So, the Vedas, yes, they do contain various categories or types of information that can help householders in terms of achieving higher goals, higher spiritual goals, how to live happily and peacefully, how to not exploit and ruin the earth in their activities, and also how they can contribute to society in a very nice way. And the way in which a wife should prepare herself for sex life with her husband, that is one type of instruction that is given. And in today's purport, Srila Prabhupada is mentioning some of the relevant items. Right? He is saying that the wife should dress in certain ways. She should adorn herself with jewelry and ointments and so forth in preparation so that she can be pleasing for her husband for the purpose of engaging in sex life. Now, after that, Srila Prabhupada mentions that he discusses the influence of the man's and the woman's mental states. Well, particularly he mentions the woman's. He actually makes specific reference to the woman's mental state during the time of conception. In other words, what is the consciousness of a man and woman at the time of conception? This is the teaching with this is that this will have or can have or will have a significant impact as to which type of soul is then attracted to the woman's womb at the time of conception, and that of course will also impact the type of body that soul develops, and from there on you also get ramifications as to what the life will actually be of that soul. And I want to discuss one very good example of this, right? I'm sure you can probably guess which one we're talking about. Right, in the Mahabharata, right? So in the Mahabharata, we can see how one case, there's a very good example of how the parents' mentality dramatically impacted the course of events, not only on the fate of the family, but also the fate of the entire dynasty, right? And of course I'm talking about in the Mahabharata, where we have Srila Vyasadeva impregnating the daughters of the king of Kashi, right? So going way back in time, right? So the Vichitravirya was the younger of two brothers born to Satyavati and Shantanu. The elder brother was Chitrangada. So in Hastinapur, so this is just before the era of the Pandavas. So Satyavati had married Shantanu, and her eldest son, Chitrangada, had been installed on the throne. But shortly afterwards, there was a Gandharva by the same name, Chitrangada, and he became envious of the Hastinapur Chitrangada, and he came down and he challenged him. And there was a battle that went on for nearly 2 years, and after that battle, the Hastinapur Chitrangada was killed. So then Vichitravirya inherited the throne, and by the arrangement of Bhishmadev, right, the grandsire of the Kuru dynasty, he organized for Vichitravirya to marry initially he had organized for all 3 daughters of the king of Kashi to marry Vichitravirya, but only the 2 younger ones ended up doing that. So, but before Vichitravirya could produce an heir to the throne, he passed away quite young. He passed away from tuberculosis. So then all of a sudden, now there's no heir to the throne. So Satyavati, the queen mother, she's thinking, what am I going to do? Right? Now, back in those days, there was a system called Devarena Sutotpati. Now, that practice is, if a man passes away early, and he leaves behind a young widow who has not had a child, then the brother of that man who passed away, he can impregnate the widow. So Prabhupada says that back in those days, so we're going back to Dwapara Yuga, that practice was acceptable. It was considered morally fine to do it. Now we don't hear of that happening these days. So Satyavati, she asked her eldest son, Srila Vyasadeva, right? So Srila Vyasadeva is Satyavati's son conceived with Parashamuni before Satyavati married Shantanu. So Srila Vyasadeva was the half-brother of Vichitravirya, and, complying with his mother's request, he came to impregnate the Ambika and Ambalika. But what happened was, when Srila Vyasadeva met with the queens for this purpose, they became totally frightened by his appearance, right? Because we have to remember, Srila Vyasadeva was a very formidable yogi. He was a mystic. He was living up in Badarik ashram and performing very severe austerities. So his physical appearance was quite sort of rough and very striking, especially for these very delicate queens who had been sheltered within the palaces all their lives. So, when Ambika went into the chamber with Srila Vyasadeva to conceive a child, she was so horrified by his appearance, so she deliberately shut out her vision. She just didn't want to see him during the sexual act. And consequently, the child that was conceived and then born was blind, right, because she had shut out her vision. And that child is, of course, Dhritarashtra Maharaj. And as we know, Dhritarashtra, he was physically blind, but he was also said to keep these blind ambitions to put his own unworthy son, that's a bit later, Duryodhana, on the throne. Anyway, then Srila Vyasadeva went into the chamber with Ambalika, the youngest princess. Now Ambalika, when she saw Srila Vyasadeva, she just became sort of horrified, and she actually turned pale. And one of the expressions also is like almost jaundiced or bloodless, very pale. And consequently, the child that was conceived at that time was born, sort of pale looking and, perhaps not so full of vigor and color. And that was, of course, Pandu Maharaj. So the name Pandu means pale. So then Satyavati is thinking, oh no, what am I going to do? Like my plan had been to really produce a very strong and prominent, very, male child. So she asked her son, Srila Vyasadeva, she said, oh look, please just try it one more time with one of the queens. So Srila Vyasadeva agreed, and so he went into the chamber. But the 2 queens refused to have anything to do with him again because they've been so horrified. So what did they do? They sent in their maidservant, right, to conceive another child. So, but when this maidservant came in, instead of becoming horrified and, sort of not wanting anything to do with Srila Vyasadeva, instead she welcomed him with honor and dignity and respect. In other words, she had a very favorable mentality, and the child that was conceived and born is, of course, Mahatma Vidura. And, within the Mahabharata, Vidura was respected by everyone. He had a very sharp intellect, he had a very good character, and he always spoke the truth. And better than anyone, he could understand all the machinations that were going on within the palaces of Hastinapur at that time. So, this pastime, yes, it does show us that the impact of the mother certainly can contribute greatly to which child is conceived, and also to the future of those children. So in our pastime today, right, we have Devahuti. She's a very devout and spiritually elevated woman. She very much wanted a son for herself and for her husband. So yes, she's asking her husband which is the right way to do this. In tomorrow's verse, we will be hearing Ambika speaking about this aerial mansion, this residence that Kardama Muni prepared for for Devahuti and himself, for the purpose of conceiving children. Now, I've got a little bit left to do here. So, through their sexual union, Devahuti and Kardama Muni, yes, first they produced 9 very beautiful daughters, and then, and these daughters, they were married off to the various Prajapatis and the Munis of that time. Right? And then they conceived this very glorious and wonderful son, who is none other than Lord Kapila Dev. And Lord Kapila Dev is an incarnation of Krishna. He is one of our Shaktavesha avatars. As we can see here in the image, yes, Lord Kapila Dev went on to instruct his mother in spiritual knowledge, in how to further advance her yoga, the process of spiritual self-realization, devotional service, and so forth. And in the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, 26, yes, Krishna does say, Siddhanam Kapilo Muni. That means he is represented by Lord Kapila Dev amongst those individuals who are considered to be perfected. Excuse me. And Lord Kapila Dev is also one of our 12 Mahajans. Right? The Mahajans are specially appointed spiritual authorities in terms of being trusted with disseminating accurate spiritual teachings and guiding materially entangled souls as to how they can overcome the material energy and, sort of become properly situated on their spiritual paths. Excuse me. So, this book, The Teachings of Lord Kapila Dev, I think it was first published in 1974. If our gift shop doesn't already have it, I'm sure that Chamari may be able to give some good advice as to how we can order this book if anyone is interested. Now, just on my last slide here. So, yes, Devahuti, she was an extraordinary woman, and Srila Prabhupada says that there are also a number of other exalted Vaishnavis from whom we today can take example. This is for women who are interested in perfecting their own lives, right? Women who are interested in purifying their consciousness and reaching their spiritual goals. For example, in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, we read about Queen Kunti, right, and her wonderful character, her wonderful devotional qualities. So Queen Kunti was one of the few individuals who actually knew that Krishna was the Supreme Personality of Godhead within the Mahabharata events. Srila Prabhupada says that not everyone knew. Another one who understood this was Bhishma Dev and the Pandavas. But Kunti Devi knew. So even though she was playing the role of Krishna's aunt, right, shall we say biologically, in blood relations, she was an aunt to Krishna, but still she honored him as the Supreme Lord. Now, there's also a very nice purport in the 9th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, in which Srila Prabhupada mentions other noteworthy women, such as Draupadi. Right? Draupadi was the chaste wife of the Pandavas. He mentions Sita Devi, right, the wife of Lord Ramachandra, who is, of course, Sita Devi is a direct expansion of Srimati Radharani. He also mentions Mandodari. So Mandodari was the wife of Ravan, right? One of our really formidable demons. But nevertheless, Mandodari, she was very learned in the Vedas, very intelligent woman, and she did try, she understood her husband's evil ways, and she tried to bring him back to the path of righteousness, but she couldn't. So anyway, yes, we do have a number of very nice examples for women, women who are very chaste and very faithful in how they have actually lived in the Grihastha ashram. There's many examples actually, but I just want to finish this class on this note. This is a question for you all. Who do we choose as our own role models? Right? Most people, I could even say all people, that might be. I'll just say most people, both men and women, we actually choose role models for ourselves, especially when we're young, and a lot of the time we do it without even noticing. So, choosing the right personalities by whom we shape our own characters, it's actually paramount if we want to be successful in our spiritual lives, even in our worldly lives. And for women, yes, Devahuti, she was an exemplary Vaishnavi who remained very proper in her behavior, very chaste and faithful to her husband. She supported her husband for him to achieve his spiritual goals, and she wanted to carry out her wifely duties in accordance with recommendations that are there in the Vedas. So we've got 5 minutes. Thank you, everyone. If anyone wants to ask a question, hello out there. You can come in. So if anyone wants to has a comment to make or ask a question or anything today.
Thank you for the class. I'll get the ball rolling, maybe. Just a small comment, if you don't mind.
Of course.
Just you mentioned the Manu Samhita, which is very important, and it's a book for mankind. And just a point of interest, Srila Prabhupada was asked by his disciples, you might have heard this, by his disciples, why haven't you given us the Manu Samhita? And Prabhupada said, I have given you the Manu Samhita. And this devotee, I heard this from Gopi.
Speak a little bit closer to
I heard this from Gopi Paranaprabhu, so that's my source. So, but this devotee couldn't quite understand Srila Prabhupada's answer, so he kept asking again, why haven't you given us Manu Samhita? He said, I have given you. And eventually Srila Prabhupada said, I've given you Manu Samhita, no meat eating, no illicit sex, no gambling, no intoxication. This is the basis for human life. And actually those 4 regular principles come from the Manu Samhita. That's where Prabhupada got them from. So in essence, Prabhupada gave us those 4 principles so we could come to the human platform and practice Krishna consciousness.
That's very nice. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Yes, I think you mentioned that to me earlier, Prabhu, and it is a very important point because Srila Prabhupada does mention that these texts such as the Manu Samhita, they are very extensive, so Srila Prabhupada has given us the Shastra and the instructions that, just the right amount that we can absorb and understand and also apply in our daily lives. So thank you very much for that comment. Yeah. Yes, Tom.
Thank you for the class. I just wanted to expand on when the Grihasthas are making a living without exploiting Mother Bhumi.
Yes.
It seems as though, as the Kali Yuga progresses, it's even hard to find a company or something to work for that's not exploiting the earth. So, the whole kind of civilization is one big exploitation of Mother Earth. So it's kind of like if we really wanted to follow it properly, you'd have to kind of break away from that civilization.
That's what we do. A lot of really it is up to the individual. How much are we going to involve ourselves with the current world in the state that it's in you know, we have to be honest about this. The condition, as you rightly say, the condition and the state of our Kali Yuga societies, it's not good, you know. And we know that, you know, people who are cultivating spiritual life within Krishna consciousness and also other individuals within other faiths, they simply want to withdraw from society because they can witness the evil that's there actually, the destruction, especially towards Mother Bhumi. I mean, I don't have to mention, you know, how her natural resources are just being devastated in this era that we are living. So specifically, your question is, just say specifically, just in a few words.
I was just kind of expanding.
Yeah, you were expanding on the point.
Yeah, asking a question.
Yeah. It's, you know, but at the same time, if an individual starts to think, okay, what type of occupation can I do that is not going to impact negatively on the earth, then I believe that, yes, they will make some progress, whatever that progress is, towards finding something that is better than worse. You know, because it's a lot of the principles of not violating the earth, they're not actually so difficult to understand, and especially principles regarding not violating the animals, you know, or other human beings. You know, a lot of that is not rocket science, as we say. So I think perhaps more than anything, it will come down to the moral disposition of the individual. Thank you for your comment. Yeah. Well, it's pretty much right on 30. Thank you everyone for listening. Hope you have a wonderful day. Hare Krishna. Jai. Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.